For me, it is one of the better budgets that we've seen in recent times. I think it speaks well for the fiscal discipline that the government has been talking about. It kind of supports the economic recovery that is badly needed. And it also has a lot of social elements to the budget that is much needed. The budget, I think, talks about a 5% economic growth this year, which obviously is a fairly healthy number. It also talks about 22% growth in revenues reaching almost 5 trillion. In that sense, and in an overall, at an overall level, I think the budget addresses a lot of what the government has been talking about before being elected and in the recent past as well. If you look at, and the other main thing is, it also stays true to the IMF program. We all understand, I think, the importance of staying close to the IMF targets. I think the primary surplus of 2.3%, the revenue to GDP of 15% are all IMF targets. The budget also, despite opening of the vehicle imports, I think is preserving, I think, the foreign currency reserves at about 6.1 billion, which is again a positive sign. The big unknown here is how the budget deficit of 2.2 trillion is going to be bridged. At this point in time, it is difficult for me to see the government being able to raise the larger portion of that deficit through the foreign funding. Like I think Nishan and I think Hasita mentioned, there may be some opportunities with the likes of IMF, World Bank and ADB, but I think the larger part of that budget deficit will have to be funded through domestic debt. And what that will do to the interest rates, and it can also bring on inflationary pressure, which could go against some of the economic recovery plans that the government has for the country. So that is largely an unknown at this point in time, but it is something that we need to be quite cognizant of and cautious about in how we are going to fund that deficit. It's also good to see the government talking about the setting up of a development bank. I think Ruvini or Shamin mentioned that as well. That is going to be supported and run by the state banks is what has been said. But again, how the capital is going to be funded, the funding for on lending to SMEs and so on and so forth remain unknown at this point in time. We were a development bank, DFCC, and the reason for us to switch over to commercial banking was the drying out of funding lines. So again, I think the whole concept of a development bank for predominantly to support SMEs is a good thing, but how the funding is going to take place and so on and so forth is still unknown. A lot of talk on the digital economy as well. Again, very, very good to see about the UDI or the ENIC. But again, and Hans has been talking about the digital economy and the GovPay initiative a few weeks ago, augurs really well for the country. But again, the proof of the pudding, I think, is how all this is going to come into and be integrated, the health systems, insurance, banking, the subsidy schemes and so on and so forth. How all that is going to come together through the UDI remains to be seen.